My name is Tina Cordova, and I grew up in the village of Tularosa, New Mexico, about 45 miles away the crows fly from the Trinity test site. My family was horribly overexposed to radiation as a result of the Trinity test, and we've been dying ever since. For 79 years now, people in my family have been diagnosed with cancer. My two great-grandfathers that were alive at the time of the test in Tularosa died from stomach cancer 10 years after the test. Both my grandmothers had cancer. My dad died from cancer. He had cancers he didn't have risk factors for, except that he was a child living in a downwind community. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer at the age of 39, and now I have a 23-year-old niece that has thyroid cancer. My sisters had cancer. My mom's being followed for a tumor. My mom's sister died from breast cancer. My dad's sister just went through cancer treatment for breast cancer. And I've lost track of my cousins and aunts and uncles that have died from cancer. And so I co-founded an organization 19 years ago called the Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consortium. Our goal is to be included in the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act that was established in 1990, 34 years ago. It has never taken care of the people of New Mexico, and we were the first people exposed to radiation any place in the world, and it's never taken care of the post-71 uranium workers. And so we fight all the time within Congress to get compensation. The bomb at Trinity exposed everybody in the state of New Mexico to radiation. We know now that it went to 46 states. The fallout went to 46 states, Canada, and Mexico. The bomb, when it was detonated on a platform 100 feet off the ground, which means it didn't produce destruction, it produced massive fallout. And that fallout went everywhere. And in 1945, we didn't have running water in most parts of New Mexico. We didn't have electricity. And so it was our rainy season. It was July when we get most of our moisture. And people would have been collecting that rain in their cisterns, in holding ponds. Obviously, our lakes would have been filling up, our rivers, our streams, our ditches. And it was all now radioactive. And that's how that's the water that we used for every purpose: drinking, cooking, bathing, cleaning. And then we didn't have electricity, so we didn't have grocery stores. We had mercantile stores, and at those places you bought sugar, flour, coffee, rice, cereal, but you didn't buy dairy, meat, or produce. All of that was produced by people by their own means at their own homes. And so now all of our animals that we raised were contaminated, and so was the grasses and the things that they fed off of. And now all of our gardens and our orchards were contaminated. And the government came, and then they left. They never warned us before or afterwards. They never explained what it meant to be overexposed to radiation. And we've been dealing alone for 79 years. And I always say we bury our loved ones on a regular basis, and then somebody else is diagnosed. And in a lot of our communities, we don't ask if we're going to get cancer. We ask when it's going to be our turn, because we've seen so many people die from cancer. The other thing is that we have this history of uranium mining in our state. Across the Navajo Nation, Laguna and Acoma Pueblo, we have 1,000 abandoned uranium mine and mill sites. They extracted 32 million tons of uranium here, and they never came back. Most of these sites are Superfund sites, and only a handful of them have ever been addressed, and we still raise our children adjacent to them. I visited Powati, which was at one time the largest open pit mine in the world. That's on Laguna Pueblo, and they're still raising children within half a mile of that mine site. That mine also exists about 30 miles from Albuquerque, the way the crows fly. We have massive dust storms in New Mexico, and that's one of the reasons people have been historically overexposed to radiation, because the wind stirs all of that fallout and suspends it back into our environment. We inhale it, it gets on our crops again, it gets into our water, etc. We have given everything we have to this. New Mexico has a history of being a patriotic state. We actually had more people enlisted during World War II in the service of our country. More people died. We bought more war bonds. We were the Navajo code talkers. Without us, without the people of New Mexico, we wouldn't have been successful in that war, and yet the government has never come back to take care of us. And I always say this has had a physiological effect on us. We've had bad health as a result. But we have psychological, emotional, and financial effects also. Indian Health Service doesn't provide cancer treatment. So if you depend on Indian Health Service, they have to go in search of treatment for you, and it can take months. People can die. The other thing is, most of us live in rural parts of the state where there is no health care. And so we always have to travel to get treatment. And what that means is our resources are stretched thin. We've been paying for this ever since. And New Mexico right now is the state most dependent on Medicaid. 47% of all the people in New Mexico use Medicaid to access health care. The other thing we recently found out is that New Mexico is carrying some of the highest medical debt in the country. We have 2 million people living here, and we're carrying $881 million in medical debt, $1 billion. And all of this is going to become a problem for our children. It has always been a problem for our children. It's going to continue to be a problem for our children. And so we have no choice. We have to keep fighting for justice. We have to make sure that Congress understands that they can't look away from us any longer. And I always say, you know, it's been easy to look away from us. There's a level of environmental racism associated with what's happened here. You know, New Mexico is the only state in the United States that has always been a minority-majority state. More than 50% of the people here have always been Hispanic, Mexican-American, Native American. And so I believe that that's how come they were able to establish the Manhattan Project here, mine here, develop and test nuclear devices here. And lately I've been saying, shame on our government for doing those things to us, for invading our lands and our lives and leaving. But I also want to say shame on the people who made the movie Oppenheimer, because they came here, they used our lands, they used our workforce, they took our tax incentives. We're a poor state. They're going to gross $1 billion on that movie, $1 billion. And they only mention the word New Mexico in the film twice. And at the time that these actors and these producers are winning all these amazing awards, they've never given credit to the part the people of New Mexico have played, not only in the Manhattan Project and the Trinity test, but in making the movie Oppenheimer. Shame on them. Shame on them, because they absolutely knew we existed. And so, you know, we stand up together, we work together as brothers and sisters who are downwinders and uranium workers, and we say no more. We're not going to stand for this anymore. A lot of the history of this was that they counted on us to be uneducated, unsophisticated, and unable to stand up for ourselves, but we're not those people anymore.